for putting this conference on. It shows a lot of vision, and it's a great opportunity to share. So my name is Karen Rollins, and I work for the Alpine Club of Canada. I'm the project director for Backcountry Energy Environmental Solutions, but we just call it BEES. BEES collects and shares information about energy, potable water, gray water, black water at off-grid mountain facilities. It's a nonprofit organization. Our funding has primarily come from Parks Canada, BC Parks, Backcountry Lodges of BC Association, and the Alpine Club of Canada. So a couple of years ago, we put together a document that kind of summarized the work we'd done to that point. It's called Best Environmental Practices for Managing Energy, Water, and Wastewater at Off-Grid Mountain Facilities. And basically, it compares technologies so that operators can make an informed choice. So my presentation is a summary of that document. So just to set the context, this is a subset of the types of mountain huts you would see in Canada. I haven't counted, but there's probably over 200 of them. They are all in the alpine or subalpine, and they're all off-grid, which means not connected to power lines, not connected to a sewage treatment system. But they all have energy requirements. So we still need to heat the hut, provide energy for cooking and lighting. They still need to provide potable water, and we still need to treat the wastewater, whether that's gray water, which is the kitchen waste, or black water, which is human waste. There are many options to do that. How do we choose? So our approach to this research was first to assimilate information about options for managing energy, potable water, gray water, and black water, and then compare the technologies using the criteria cost, reliability, installation, operation, and maintenance, environment, and that means local environmental impacts as well as global environmental impacts, cultural value, health and safety, planning, and permitting. And then we developed recommendations, which are based on BEES philosophy, which includes to reduce the environmental impacts, reduce the use of fossil fuels, and foster energy efficiency. So before I get into energy options, just a word about energy efficiency and a technology that is often overlooked, and that is architectural technology. The best way to be energy efficient is to reduce the need for heat energy. And you can do that by using lots of insulation in your buildings, airtight construction with no thermal bridging, heat recovery ventilation, and even triple glazing. We've done calculations that show it's actually more cost effective to put some money in to these construction techniques ahead of time rather than try and pay for the additional cost for heat over the life cycle of the building. Oh, that's better. Where was I? Okay. I can't remember. Let's just go on to this one. So the Alpine Club of Canada is building a new hut. It's called the Daypaloo hut. It's going to be placed on the col just east of the Daypaloo Glacier and Mount Daypaloo on the Wapta ice fields. It's going to open up a whole new route for the world-class Wapta Traverse. It looks like an ordinary hut, but there's really nothing ordinary about it. It's a BEES project. We're going to be using some super construction techniques. So for instance, the Canadian Building Code requires that the minimum R value for a wall is 30, R30 in Canada. So the wall, and that means you can do that with a 2x6 with bad insulation with an extra 2 inches of rigid insulation on the outside. That's R30. So this hut is going to be R50. So we're looking at 12-inch thick walls filled with rigid insulation. We're also going to be building with SIP panels, structural insulated panels, because they are insulation and structure and air barrier and vapor barrier all in one, and it increases the assembly time. So more information about that on the Bees website. Back to energy. So energy is required in the backcountry for heating, cooking, lighting, waste management, ventilation, and communications. Energy options include wood burning, propane, microhydro, photovoltaics, and wind power. So first of all, wood burning, it's the most common energy source for heating a building. Very reliable, traditional source. We fly up the logs by helicopter. Although in the old days, the Swiss guides used to carry logs up on their backs, and still have room for their sherry and apple pie. But nowadays, they're flown up by helicopter. The main drawback from wood burning is that there are some air quality issues. Propane is used for cooking and lighting and can be used for heating as well. It's also very reliable and works well in cold temperatures, but it is a fossil fuel. However, we did a comparison between a wood-burning stove and a propane stove, and we found that propane is 25% less expensive than wood burning once you consider transportation costs. Propane requires half the number of helicopter flights than wood burning, which is important when you're flying over a wilderness area and you're worried about disturbance to wildlife. Propane is less polluting to the indoor and outdoor air quality, and propane produces 15% less carbon dioxide. So the Day Paloo hut will have a small propane stove to heat it. Microhydro is used by a lot of the large commercial lodges. It is, newer models are more reliable than older ones. Main drawback is the disruptance, is that a word? To aquatic life. And there is, not every location is suitable for microhydro. Obviously in the high alpine there's no stream flow, but if you do happen to have a stream, take advantage of it, because it is actually the most economical energy source. Photovoltaics, solar panels, good for electrical energy needs. Very reliable as well, no moving parts. The weak link is the batteries. Pretty environmentally friendly, some visual impact. And wind turbine. This is actually not a wind turbine, this is a weather station that Bees and the University of Saskatchewan set up at the Bow Hut in order to study the wind and other climate parameters to see if a wind turbine might be suitable for that site. The main thing about wind is that you should really choose a turbine that has proven success in harsh, cold climates, and that'll weed out a lot of manufacturers right there. On to potable water. Potable water, of course, is a drinking water. Sources include snow melt, streams, springs, and glacial meltwater. Treatment is required to kill the pathogens. And other issues are turbidity and heavy metals. Turbidity, of course, is the measure of clarity of water. Glacial meltwater is considered highly turbid because it contains a lot of dissolved fine particles. Oops. Potable water treatment methods include boiling, chemical treatment, filtration, and UV treatment. The most common way we treat water in the alpine is by boiling. Very simple, low tech, but it does consume energy. And just to note that chemical treatment and UV treatment lose effectiveness with turbidity. And that's important to know when you're in the alpine and you're using glacial meltwater. And on to gray water. Gray water is kitchen wastewater. It contains soap, food particles, oil, grease, nutrients, bacteria, virus, and chemicals. Objectives of gray water treatment are to control odors, not provide an attraction for wildlife, prevent contamination of groundwater and surface water, and prevent eutrophication of surface waters. This is a low-tech grease trap located outside. Water is plumbed in from the hut, goes through this insulated line, and goes into this barrel. The grease floats to the top, particles go to the bottom, water is taken out of the middle, and it goes through the secondary sand filter, and then out to dispersion field. Another low-tech method, this one can be used winter and summer. Basically, water is captured in a bucket under the sink. It goes through a sieve to remove the larger food particles. The water is carried out by hand and it's dumped into any one of these PVC pipes that are sticking up over a drainage field of sand and gravel. So the sand and gravel mechanically filter out the particles and the grease, and the bacteria on the sand and gravel decompose the organic material. This is what we're going to be using at the Depaloo hut. And finally, black water, which is sewage, contains urine, fecal waste, toilet paper. Objectives of black water management are to control pollution on site and prevent disease through human contact. Options for black water management in use in Canada's alpine include barrel flyout, incineration, composting, tertiary waste treatment, and carryout. Pit toilets were used a lot in the past, but really over the last 20 years they've been phased out in favor of the barrel flyout system. Barrel flyout is the most commonly used waste management treatment system in Canada's mountains. It involves capturing human waste in their 150-liter barrels. Once the barrel's full, the barrel's moved aside and new ones put underneath. Once a year or so, maintenance people come along with a helicopter and fly them out. They can fly out 3 at a time with a 407. And they fly it out down to a staging area where a pumper truck is waiting. They pump out the barrels and the waste is taken to an actual waste treatment facility for processing. It functions well in any environment, no local environmental impact to soil and water, but there are some environmental impacts from odors, noise and fossil fuel from the helicopter, and there is a risk of spill. Incinerating involves just burning the waste. The liquids are evaporated through boiling, and the solids are converted to an ash. Reliability actually varies per manufacturer. Some work better than others. One of our recommendations was to increase the burn time. We found that was more effective at elevation. And composting. Composting sounds like it should work, and sounds like something that doesn't require a lot of input. Just let nature do it. But it's actually one of the most technologically challenging waste management option. Our recommendations are to use a vertical chamber, buy a model that first in, first out. And this is a case where bigger is actually better because that increases the retention time and increases the likelihood that the material will actually be composted at the end. You're going to require a source of heat in the alpine, which means you're going to be using fossil fuels. It also requires an electrical energy source to run the ventilation fan, You need people who know what they're doing to operate it. And keep in mind that the end product is still considered a hazardous waste, so it still needs to be treated and somehow and handled that way. Vermicomposting, a much better solution. This is where worms and bacteria convert the waste. So the worms eat the waste, it passes through their digestive system where the pathogens are neutralized, comes out the other end, and we have a stable end product. I think there is a future in vermicomposting. Tertiary waste treatment used by a lot of the larger commercial lodge operations. This is also a method of grey water management. Essentially, the waste is treated through mechanical, biological, and chemical means. Lots of different kind of manufacturers out there, and success varies. And carry-out. Carry-out involves everybody collecting their own waste and carrying it out. The main issues with carry-out are that you need 100% compliance and final disposal. Their regulations still need to be developed for final disposal. Urine diversion involves separating the urine from the feces before they're allowed to mix. So urine is actually considered sterile, whereas feces is the thing with pathogens. Urine may be dispersed on site in a dispersion field or may be evaporated. And that process alone will reduce your volume of waste by 80 to 90%. And dehydrating toilets involves urine source separation combined with dehydration of the solids, can reduce the amount of waste by 90%. Pathogen elimination cannot be totally achieved, and dehydration will cease if the pile freezes. For more information, actually they use this method in Europe. Thousands of them are installed. Take a look at Ecosphere Technologies in France. So when choosing a blackwater option, consider access, because obviously if you don't have access to helicopters, you're not going to be doing the barrel flyout. Environmental conditions, amount of use. That's really important for composting, because composting toilets like a steady addition of material. Energy requirements versus energy availability, your budget, availability of resources, including people with the right skills, and health and safety codes and land manager requirements. I have just a little decision tree here. So you got a low use facility, no soil, you're probably going to do carry out. Also high use and no centralized facilities, so you're doing glacier travel, you might want to do carry out there too. Low use and you have sufficient soil, you might be able to get away with pit toilet. High use, no custodian, which pretty much describes the Alpine Club of Canada, which is why we do barrel flyout and urine diversion. High use with a custodian, but no energy, not much change. But if you do have an energy source, you got a lot of options. So essentially, there really is no magic bullet. Every technology has advantages and disadvantages, and it's really up to your particular situation to choose what is best for you. So thank you very much. Any questions? Yes?
At the new hut that you were showing us, what solid or wastewater management system?
Oh. So we're going to do barrel flyout. And the reason for that is because the Alpine Club of Canada is all set up for it. And you know, there are, I don't know how many, there's Peyto, Bohut, Balfour, Scott Duncan, and now Day Palouse. So they'll probably service them all in one day. Boing, 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 done, right? However, we're going to have the outhouse structure insulated so that maybe in the future we can look at urine diversion and maybe dehydration or vermicomposting or something like that. We can put a heat source in there and, yeah, down the road.
And how far is your fly out?
How far is?
The fly out distance?
Oh. Depends on the staging area. So if they go from the bow hut side, it'll be 15 minutes. If they go from Takaka Falls, more like 7 minutes. Yeah. Yes.
For heat source, have you tried solar hot water?
No. We looked at that. It's just not really feasible in the wintertime. It might be something to do in the summer, but it's just, we looked at, it takes too much energy. It takes too much solar power to do that. And, the sun is fairly low in the winter. So, yeah, it's just not really feasible for us. John?
Karen, with that new hut, very high R value, and with the vapor barriers you have inside, how do you ventilate?
Oh, heat recovery ventilation. Oh, yes. And that's why we were going to have, we will have solar panels and one small turbine to provide electrical energy to run some lights, which is hardly anything. Most of the energy is for ventilation, right? So heat recovery ventilation. What that involves is we can't just open a window or open a vent because you got spin drift and you got cold air, and people are just going to put a sock in it. It's really uncomfortable. So heat recovery ventilation involves using the air inside that's already warm and passing it over the incoming fresh air, not mixing, but just kind of passing it over, and that sort of pre-warms it before it's distributed to the hut. So that will help to remove moisture that's generated in the hut, so we'll less likelihood of having condensation on the inside of the walls. Yeah. Okay. Good question. Thanks.
You have experimented with bacteria-based toilets.
How much?
Experimented with the bacteria-based toilets. And what are the results that we want to know? At high altitude, we have problems because of low temperatures, etc. We're trying to find solution for bacteria-based toilets, as you mentioned in your presentation.
So you mean the
Have you
dispersion field, like the grey water dispersion field, where there's bacteria on this?
Yeah, bacteria-based toilets.
Yeah.
Have you stored any, and what is the
Yeah.
result? How far you have used?
So the bacteria on the sand and gravel in the grey water dispersion field will occur naturally, but I hope this answers your question. Of course, the system won't be working in the winter time. But this hut is winter access only, so all the grey water goes in there and probably freezes. But once it thaws out in the summer, everything will kick into action and be good to go for the next season. So you have to think of these things as functioning over a year cycle.
Karen,
Yeah. Yep.
is heat the only factor that, or does altitude also play a role?
Is heat the only factor, and does altitude also play a role in what?
In the composting, the bacteria-based?
Oh. I don't know. I think bacteria, they'll be there regardless because they come in from the material that's being dumped. So they're going to be there. I don't think you have to spike it in any way. So I don't think elevation has anything to do with it. Yeah. I think just warm enough that they will, live and reproduce and eat and do their thing. Yeah.
What altitude is this new hut?
It's 8,600 feet, something like that. Altitude. What latitude? And what latitude? 58, I think. Something like that. I'm guessing. I have it written down somewhere. Okay. One more question.
Yeah, Karen, what is the capacity of the hut, and at full capacity,
capacity is 18. And hut use will be from December through May. And we expect, something like 7 people in there in December, maybe another 7 in January, and then in February it'll start picking up again. We expect full capacity in March and April. And what's the second part of your question?
So how often do you use
Oh,
it?
waste. So we'll have a huge barrel storage area. It'll probably get serviced once a year. Yeah. But it'll mean, a few trips, so 3 barrels at a time. I think there's room for like 24 barrels in there. I did calculate, I can't remember how many we expect there'll be, but it's more than enough. Yeah. One more question back?
One more question. Do you also stay in contact with European alpine clubs and in practice they have, for example, Swiss or Austrian alpine club?
For example?
Because, for example, the Swiss in the last years built some very
the Swiss,
new
yeah.
projects of huts.
Yeah. Monte Rosa hut, for instance. Yeah. So Monte Rosa is a passive house, which is exactly what we're shooting for, in fact. I don't think we'll get certified as a passive house because the specifications are just kind of a little wonky. So, but that's what we're kind of planning on, is so it'll actually function like that. So, we'll have windows on the south, which will bring in the sun's energy. That's actually the primary heat, will be the sun. Secondary will be that small propane stove. And all the other specifications for passive house, super insulation, thermal bridging, heat recovery ventilation, triple glazing. I wish we could get better windows in Canada like you can get in Europe, but we'll do our best. Yeah.
Yeah, because, for example, Monte Rosa hut, the first years didn't really work like it should. It had many problems.
Oh.
Perhaps you...
Maybe I should talk to them a bit more about that. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, we got one more.
Oh, one more?
We got
Oh, okay. Hi, Laura.
What are the energy and maintenance requirements of dehydrating toilets?
Energy and maintenance for dehydrating toilets. You're going to need it to keep it above freezing. Okay, so whatever that takes. So if you can put it in some kind of a building that's well insulated, you'll need less heat to keep that right. You also need electrical energy to run fans. I don't have numbers about how that works. When Jeff Hill, is Jeff Hill here yet? Or he comes
No,
tomorrow?
he's not yet,
Yeah. Okay. Oh. Oh, perfect.
We need only electrical energy for fans. Because you dry places on toilet paper with fan. And the technology that you show is it's in a compressor and people that have coding too on their bags in geotextile, and that just urine or some stuff can just go under the bag. It works with only electrical energy. Because on our technology we have a conveyor belt that separates urine from fecal content, so you don't have too many liquid.
So even in the Alpine in the wintertime, no heat?
In the hut, when we integrate it, we have some heat,
Yeah.
but it's not usual. You don't need it because the system is thought to work even in winter conditions.
Okay.
But you will have more details on the
All right, well, thank you, Karen. Yeah. Okay, we approached the lunch hour. Pam, we have, 10 vegetarians? Oh, we have a lot of vegetarian. Oh, okay. Okay, so if there's a lot of vegetarians, we've got the lunches are ready to go. Ellen, do you have anything for a moment here? Let's go with this one for.
Okay. Yes, as Roger said, we've got box lunches for everybody, and I'm assuming the weather is still looking fabulous, and you can go out and sit out on the lawn. We'd appreciate if everybody would be back here by, about 10 minutes of 1. So that's almost exactly an hour. And if you have any questions for speakers who spoke this morning, feel free, please, to approach them during lunch. Roger and I are available for questions that we can answer to the best of our ability. And we'll look forward to seeing you all in about an hour.